This training section will cover basic combat maneuvers and tactics. More advanced tactics and options are available, and you'll generally learn them as you build your skill set within the game. But this training section will provide you with the basics you need to know to get started handling your ship in combat within the zero-gravity vacuum environment of space. Unlike the atmospheric environment of combat aircraft in the past, open space is a fully 3D environment without the obstacle of terrain or limitation of high altitude to confine the vertical range of movement. So as a space combat pilot, you are free to utilize the full range of directions and diverse range of velocities. Your primary focus should be on maintaining the correct velocities for the maneuvers you need to perform and executing those maneuvers to obtain the optimal attack position on your target. In space, there is no atmosphere to generate lift or drag, so any changes in your ship's course require using thrusters to modify. Different thruster systems can provide different performance results for those maneuvers. Your ship's mass will also have a significant impact on how fast you can perform maneuvers, and some may not work very well or at all for certain classes of ships. So make sure to consider these factors when planning your combat strategies. Here are a few important points to keep in mind during combat. Speed is critical. Always keep moving. Try to avoid making sharp turns with the IDS on, which risks slowing you down to speeds that make you an easier target. In active combat, you will rarely want to allow your speed to drop below 1,000. Maintaining high speed with moderate rate turns for wide arcs is important. Remember to use the afterburner when needed to maintain high speed. You'll also want to avoid flying too fast, which can result in ineffective high-speed passes that leave little time to inflict damage on the target. You'll need to learn how to balance speed and approach angles for optimal defensive and offensive effectiveness. This training section will introduce you to some of the basic maneuvering principles for space combat. One important situation awareness principle to keep in mind is watching your radar. The 3D radar is centered in the cockpit right below the gun sight for a reason. Next to the information projected on the HUD, the 3D radar is generally the second most important display to watch. It's important to get in the habit of checking the radar every few seconds to continually monitor the direction of the threats around you. Your current target will be highlighted with brackets on this display, so if you lose them visually, you can keep track of their direction on the radar to plot your next move accordingly. In combat, it's generally best to leave your HUD in Mode 2, which provides important status information around the gun sight, as explained in earlier training stages. With Mode 2 active, you generally won't have to look away from the gun sight in the heat of battle to view important information on your ship's velocity, course, shield array status, weapon power, and hull damage status. Verify the HUD is in Mode 2 now. First, we'll review some basic defensive options and tactics. As explained in the Combat Weapon Systems section, one of the most important elements of surviving space combat engagements is managing your shield arrays. You should already be familiar with augmenting power to each individual array at this point. If not, you may want to go back and review that training section. Keeping your shields charged and supplied with energy is important in preventing direct hull impacts from enemy gunfire and missiles. Also important is keeping your ship's velocity high enough to avoid becoming an easy target for your enemy's MDTS-locked gunfire and missiles, but not so high that you wind up just making high-speed jousting passes by your enemy with little time to inflict damage. To get started, set your IDS scale value to X2 to provide a higher velocity set limit for practicing some defensive combat maneuvers. Once the IDS scale is set to that level, increase your ship's velocity to the new maximum speed available and fly in a straight line at heading 0, pitch 0. The training section will continue once you have lined up in that direction and have reached the maximum X2 set velocity. Now we will practice a turn to avoid losing too much speed and/or not turning quickly enough. This will require you to balance your turn rate between too sharp and too shallow. Your objective is to turn exactly left or right at a rate that allows your forward FVL speed to remain above at least 1,000, but you'll also need to complete the turn in less than 10 seconds. If you start turning too quickly, you can use the afterburner to bring your speed back up. If you fail this turn, this stage will repeat until you succeed. Turn exactly left or right to a heading of 180 and pitch 0 now, and keep your speed above 1,000. Good. The turn you just performed is one way to avoid letting your speed drop too much while not flying so fast that a moderate turn is impractical. With practice, you'll learn how to perform various turns and loops at different velocities and angles to avoid losing too much speed or taking too long to change direction. Return to heading 0 and pitch 0 with your speed at X2 IDS maximum. Another maneuver we will practice is a snap 180. Unlike the previous turn, this maneuver involves disengaging the IDS and then turning around as fast as possible to face a threat behind you. This allows you to fly backwards at your current velocity, giving you the opportunity to fire back at a target that is chasing you. For this stage, a hostile ship will be placed behind you, and your objective is to turn off the IDS, then turn around to face the target in your gun sight before the 5-second timer is up. You can turn any way you like, but be careful not to overshoot aligning the target in your gun sight. As soon as the timer starts, disengage the IDS and turn around to put the target behind you in your gun sight. Go! Nicely done. Next, we'll review a few evasive maneuver options that can help avoid incoming gunfire or missiles. The first will be a basic corkscrew maneuver, which can help avoid gunfire from an opponent at longer ranges. The idea is to spin your ship repeatedly with roll and pitch only, while continuing to fly in a consistent direction. First, engage the IDS if you haven't already done so. Then bring your speed back up to the X2 IDS maximum and fly in a straight line at any heading. At these speeds, you can apply a high level of rotational changes to your ship without significantly impacting your drift momentum. To practice a corkscrew maneuver, you will simply apply maximum roll and pitch, but do not apply any yaw. Go ahead and apply maximum roll either left or right, as well as maximum pitch either up or down, and maintain the spin for at least 5 seconds. Good. While performing a spin maneuver like this, an opponent's MDTS will have a harder time tracking your movements, if your distance is great enough and if your course changes slightly as your ship rotates. It's also generally better to perform a spin when your course is near perpendicular to your opponent's. You can augment either roll or pitch to change your directional pattern as needed for more effective evasion, depending on range and your ship's agility. At closer ranges, where evasive maneuvers will be less effective, you may want to simply boost power to shields and arc around your opponent to evade, or face them for a quick flyby. Next, we'll practice minimizing your ship's heat signature for maximum countermeasure effectiveness, and review some important principles.